one of the hardest working people in our business, Dianna Russini, the Athletic Senior NFL Insider's got all sorts of good stuff. And there's a lot of stuff going on. This is the time of the year. Coaches now, David Tepper fires a coach, and now everybody's looking over their shoulder. So, Dianna, it's great to see you. I want to talk about a coach that I have defended on the air because I do think he's done a good job with his side of the ball. There's a lot of moving parts with the Jets. You're really connected to this situation. Is Saleh safe? Where do you land on that? What do you hear?
Anytime you want to talk about the Jets, Colin, on your show, just say, does Aaron Rodgers want this to happen? Because that's the way this organization operates. If Aaron Rodgers wants it, if he wants Robert Salah is going to be the coach. If he feels like Robert Salah is a good communicator, he's a good listener, he connects with these players really well, then Aaron Rodgers is going to want to stick with him. And from the sense I get around the building, the staff feels like they're going to be safe. There's an understanding that Woody Johnson understands that the season completely changed once Aaron Rodgers was injured, right? Because that's really the storyline that the Jets organization wants fans and people around the league to understand. Every single thing on this team was built around Aaron, going back to how they handled their free agency. We know that they hired Nathaniel Hackett because of Aaron Rodgers. We know that free agency wish list he had. Everything has to do with making sure Aaron Rodgers is not only happy, but he's empowered, right? They want to make him feel that he's not just the quarterback on this team, but he's part of this franchise, and he has the control, and he is given that control. Now, look, there's a collaboration. They all have conversations. But bottom line here, if Aaron Rodgers wants it, Aaron Rodgers is going to get it. And if he believes that Joe Douglas and Robert Salah are the right guys for next season, these guys are safe, and it seems like that's how they all feel in the building.
All right, I want to bring up Jim Harbaugh. So I was told last night from somebody that was connected and was this weekend at Ohio State, Michigan. There's a feeling at Michigan this could be it, especially if he wins a natty. All your sources. Are you hearing his name, Dianna, being bandied about when you talk to people?
Absolutely. Ever since Jim left the NFL, his name is always in the mix, but it certainly has heated up a lot more over the last week or so. So let's just start with Carolina, right? You mentioned David Tepper makes that firing this last week with Frank Reich now out. If you remember, Tepper and Harbaugh had conversations last year, right? It obviously didn't pan out, but this was something that they discussed. So that's a name that I'm hearing again. The Chicago Bears are another organization I have heard has had some conversations about that, depending on what decision they make with this coaching staff that is in place, and of course what they do with that quarterback situation. But Jim is certainly a name that is respected in league circles in the NFL. Ownership is definitely obviously very interested in what he could bring back to the NFL. So I certainly think this is going to just continue as we get closer to the end of the NFL regular season, when ownership can start beginning that process of the coach search.
Okay, so you have an article at The Athletic about Mike Vrabel. Now, his name has been mentioned as a successor to Belichick. That's well documented and often discussed. I can't see Tennessee letting him walk out the door. Your take on Vrabel, one of my favorite guys in the NFL, one of my favorite coaches. What are you hearing?
The sense I get from the Titans organization, and this is just talking to high-ranking sources there, just about how they feel. Let's just start there about their head coach, right? Because they're not having a good year at all. They don't look good on either side of the ball. And Vrabel's done a really good job the last few seasons of putting together a pretty good product, considering the roster has never really been that great. But that being said, they know what they have. You know, sometimes with owners, you wonder if they understand that the talent that they have on the coaching side is that good if they're not winning. And that's really why I started to dig on that story, because he's a type of coach where you do talk to people around the league. They consider him to be a top 10, top 5 head coach in the league, despite the fact that he hasn't won a Super Bowl with the Titans just yet. Everyone that competes against him knows that they're going to be a really tough team to beat. So the sense I get out of Tennessee is they want to keep him there. Now, in terms of the New England side of this, And I think the rumors really started to pick up when Mike Vrabel was up in New England. He was inducted in that Patriot Ring of Honor. And we saw him, right, during the game when the Patriots played the Bills. He's sitting in the suite with Robert Kraft, and they looked comfy, right? And you have to wonder what those conversations were. Of course, that would be tampering, so they wouldn't be doing that. But one of the takeaways was, the New England reporters up there were saying that Vrabel was emphasizing to Kraft, it's not like this in other places. This place is really special. And I know that stood out to me, and it made me think, maybe that's something he would want. Yeah. Maybe he wants to go back to New England. But after doing some digging on that last week, bottom line, he wants to be in Tennessee, and Tennessee wants him to be in Tennessee. So I think this is going to be a marriage that we're going to see work out and continue over the next few years. All
right, so I don't think Carolina's going to win much going forward. So the Bears have their pick. They have the number 1 pick. My guess is Caleb Williams. Despite the win, 33 starts in the NFL. I watched C.J. Stroud by the second half of his first week. If you're good, you see it, and you see it pretty quick. My guess is Chicago is moving off Justin, and I do think he has a market somewhere like Atlanta. Has that decision been made, according to your sources?
I don't believe it's been made. I don't think it's been finalized. Anytime you talk to somebody in the Chicago organization, they'll tell you, we're still evaluating. And in terms of the power and the control there, Kevin Warren has been brought in there. He really started doing the work in Chicago. He was hired in January, but pretty much April. So he's really trying to take that time to take a look at all of it, the quarterback position, the coaching staff, and really try to make a unemotional decision in how he sees the Chicago Bears organization, not just have success in the short term, but of course the long term. So depending on how he sees it. But for me, just from staying on that story and following it all season long and obviously having those conversations, I do see Chicago not only moving on from their head coach, but I do see them getting back in the quarterback market and figuring out where Justin Fields lands next. To me, why not the Eagles? That looks like a trade that Howie Roseman would make. Yeah. Perhaps like a Trey Lance type situation where we saw this past off season, right? Yep. That would make a lot of sense. We'll see if they'll come up with that.
J-Mac, Atlanta and the Philadelphia Eagles, J-Mac mentioned that yesterday, that it's interesting. It's an offensive culture. Maybe he'd be more comfortable, better offensive line and weapons. Okay. When the Niners went and got Chase Young, it didn't get a lot of play because Chase Young was seen as somebody who had sort of underperformed. But if you look at analytics since he arrived, he's actually helped their defensive front. The guy's a baller. So Shaq Leonard, maybe it was over in Indy, but for 30 snaps, you can't tell me he doesn't matter. What is the market on Shaq Leonard? You hear all sorts of stuff. What's the latest?
Yeah, it's interesting how you surround yourself with studs, how your productivity really goes up. And it really seems like with Chase that's been the case here, change of environment. But for Shaq Leonard, I think it's a different scenario, Colin. He's obviously a really disruptive player. I remember another player telling me, when you play this team, you have to know where he is at all times. I don't necessarily believe that's still the case. I don't think he's done. He's obviously not washed. You're talking about 2 top teams who are bringing him in for a visit, right? He met with the Dallas Cowboys yesterday. He spent the day with the coaching staff. He had a physical. He left without a deal, though. And Philadelphia hadn't set up that visit until yesterday afternoon, really, because they thought Dallas was going to be able to get the deal done. And I was told that Shaq really wants to take some time here to decide where he wants to go. So he's in Philadelphia at this moment, and I was told that he'll take this weekend most likely to decide where he wants to go. So in terms of his level of play, I mean, both teams, talking to both of them, they obviously feel like they can make a difference, and these are two, he can make a difference. And these are both teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, who were making phone calls during the trade deadline at the end of October to try to find a linebacker, right? Both of them were in the market for it and weren't able to land anyone. So it actually makes a lot of sense why they would be bringing in Shaq at this point. And if he can just resemble a little bit of what he was doing in, say, like 2021 with 7 forced fumbles, then this is quite the addition late in the year that he would be. But obviously we know he's dealt with a lot of injuries.
Finally, in Los Angeles, they're not a big brand, but they are a big talking point on Mondays after close losses, the Chargers. So there was a story today. Spanos is generally, they don't spend a ton of money on coaches. They'll let it play out to the end of the season. A lot of people here talk about, Kellen Moore. My question is, would they consider a Harbaugh, and then Harbaugh would want personnel control? What are you hearing? Would it be Kellen Moore? Would it be big money? And they've been reluctant. Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, they've taken young up-and-comers. Harbaugh in the discussion, big name. What do you make of it, Dianna?
Well, I can tell you the Kellen Moore situation, he's been given an opportunity to show what he's able to do on the offensive side of the ball and bring out the best in Justin Herbert. So we've seen it. And I'm not necessarily sure that's helped him this season. I think Kellen Moore's value was a lot higher last year when he was with the Dallas Cowboys, when he met with the Panthers twice. He almost got that job. He was close to getting that job. So I would be shocked if they went with Kellen Moore, who obviously is on that staff right now. And I know there's a report right now that they're going to clear house, and that's the sense around the league that Brandon Staley will be done at the end of this year, pretty much no matter what happens here over the next few weeks. Obviously, if they were able to go all the way to the Super Bowl, that's not going to change. But with that in mind, I do think Jim Harbaugh is a name that they'd be crazy not to at least take a meeting with him, knowing that, look, we haven't been able to figure this out and get this right with the people that we put in place that don't have as much experience. Why not bring in a guy who knows how to develop a quarterback? And yeah, maybe the control thing isn't doesn't agree with how you normally run business, but sometimes you see these teams going in a different direction, knowing it's probably for the better, and that could be for the better for the Chargers.
Dianna Russini worked so hard. The Athletic, reader stuff, latest article on Vrabel, one of the smart guys in the league. As always, I know you're going to have to endure that weather. I'm not even going to talk about California weather. No reason to rub it in, but the best going forward for you. You work very hard. There's a lot of stuff in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Your life's going to get crazy. We love having you on the show, Dianna. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.